Good evening. Really glad to be here tonight and see you all show up and okay, just help me as it goes. In case I move out of the way or something. But my name is Bill Severance, and Trent and Shane asked me to come speak to you all tonight. They said you've got the second, third, and fourth grade parents of young kids entering the system, and it immediately takes me back to when I was coaching second and third and fourth graders in my life, and it's just the greatest time in your life. It's everything. I mean, you're herding cats, you don't know what you're doing, but I'm glad you're here, because for me, one of the things that I always like to talk about to parents is just be there. Be there for your kids, and roll it with them and go with them, and ultimately that's all they ever want. And so he said for me to go ahead and introduce myself. And again, my name is Bill Severance. I'm your average guy that coached Little League for a long time. I have an amazing wife, Suzanne. We've been married 46 years. We have 4 beautiful children with 4 beautiful spouses. And one of my spouses' mother and father is here tonight, Fred and Jeannie Beck, great friends of mine. So we're incredibly blessed. We have our 13th grandchild coming this year. So we have 6 boys, 6 girls. So we're going to welcome the tiebreaker in March. Very excited about that. But we are really, really blessed. I don't know when I turned 70, so I don't know how I turned 70 so fast. I mean, how does that happen? And the point is, today they're second, third, and fourth graders, and tomorrow it just goes so fast. So time really flies. So anyway, let's get started. We're going to talk a little bit about the Sandlot. That's kind of my deal. It's kind of where I never grew up and got out of, but I had every one of you I didn't know we were going to have this many people, but we've got books out there, and if you would like a book, you can go to sandlotkeeper@gmail.com and ask me for one, and I'll send you one. But anyway, the Sandlot was that time, and I've never done this before, but I thought, well, let's try it tonight. If you have a book with you, turn to page 12. The Sandlot. Are you all with me? Everybody seen the movie? We know what we're talking about, where when we were growing up and we were young, we had a chance to go out and play with our friends all day long. And from 8 o'clock in the morning until we knew that our mothers wanted us home, that's what we did. Anybody agree with that? Is it good? That's what we did. And but times have changed, because you can't do that too much anymore. The kids can't disappear like we used to. And so as a result, it falls on the parents. It falls on you all to kind of recreate that time where a kid gets a chance to learn the game. So for basketball, which everybody's going to basketball this year. And basketball for me was always a very tough game. Apparently I shot from too far out. My coaches never liked that. And I mean, when you get benched in a church league basketball team for shooting from too far out, but I told them, but I always get the rebound, because it would come so far out. And but basketball was a very difficult game for me. And so on page 12 of the book, it says that the Sandlot is one of those mystical, magical places in childhood, a place where dreams begin and boys and girls learn the art of working together to accomplish a single goal, and that's to have fun. Well, that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to get together and we wanted to have fun. That's it. And we took all day long, and it was a great time. My story, to let you know a little bit about where I'm coming from, is that all I ever wanted to do was play baseball. From the day I had a memory, and I don't have too many memories except the memories about when I wanted to be the next Mickey Mantle, play for the New York Yankees, and I had a dream. And every kid has a dream. And now that I'm where I am in life, I see all the dreams, and I didn't know what my kids were going to do. I didn't know what they were going to be. But anyway, but growing up, all I ever wanted to do was play baseball. And my mother was always my best friend. And now with Suzanne of 46 years, I have lots of help. I don't have to worry too much about anything I do. But when I was in 7th grade, she told me that she thought it would be good for me to get a paper route. So anybody ever remember the days of the paper route? Yeah, good. good. All right, 10, 20, 30 of you. Well, this is what I had. I had a bicycle, and I can't believe what I did, but I got up every morning from 7th to 12th grade, 365 days a year at 4 o'clock every morning, and got up and threw 120 papers. When I think about it now, I go, man, what were you thinking? But obviously I wasn't, but my mother knew that if I wanted money, I was going to need to generate it and make it. So I got up. So what I did was I kind of transferred that into throwing runners out at the plate. So I would put my 120 papers, I'd get up and I'd ride down every morning and I would get 120 papers and I would drive through the neighborhood and I would throw them at houses. I mean, I don't think anybody does that anymore, but it used to be really cool. I broke 37 windows in 5 years. I canceled my parents' homeowner's insurance, because I was throwing runners out at the plate, and sometimes you had to put a little more on the throw. And so my father was not real. I think the day that I broke the window right about 12 feet from his bedroom window, that might have been the final straw for him, but I was having a good time throwing those papers. And but when I would get up every morning, I would ride my bike down to the highway patrol station, and there was a dispatcher down there, and he would say, hey, if you'll go get the donuts, I'll buy. Well, that's a pretty good deal, because I really thought that might be my best meal of the day. I don't know what I was going to do, but anyway, I'd go down and I'd get some donuts, ride back over, eat a couple bags, and head out into the morning throwing my papers. So by the time I got to 10th grade, it was time for baseball tryouts. And you're only 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade, but you're already thinking about 10th and 11th and 12th grade, it seemed like to me anyway. You're already thinking about what's coming on down the road, what's going to happen and everything else. I'm here to tell you, don't worry about it. Okay? This is a sportsmanship talk supposedly, but I'm just going to tell you, we'll get into a few things, but I'm telling you that you just don't know what your kid's going to do. And they're going to do something really, really cool. One of my favorite dads here, he comes up to me a couple years ago, we were over at the athletic club, and he goes, I got a problem. I said, what's your problem? He said, Max doesn't want to play baseball anymore. I said, okay, what does he want to do? He said, he wants to play the bass fiddle. What do I do? I said, get a bigger car. So he gets his bigger car. Max, 3 years ago, gets a $38,000 a year scholarship to play the bass fiddle at the Cleveland Institute of Music. So I got to have lunch with Max and his dad about 6 months ago. And he says, Mr. Severance, I loved baseball. And I loved my bass fiddle. And I had to make a decision. What do I want to be? What do I want to do? He goes, and I love baseball, but I love the bass better. So to me, Max is always one of my favorite stories if you just don't know what your kid's going to do. So don't worry about it today for sure. And as we get into the Keepers of the Sandlot a little bit, I'll go over a couple things that will prove that for you. But my kids are doing fine. Like I said, they have 4 amazing spouses, and we have our 13th grandchild on the way. So you don't know what's going to happen. My favorite movie, Field of Dreams, obviously, but Moneyball, where he looks at that scout and goes, Don, you don't know what this kid's going to do. I've seen you tell them that you know that he's going to be the center fielder for the New York Yankees, and you don't know that. So anyway, you really just don't know. The most important thing for you to do right now is be there with your kids. Don't miss a day. Don't miss a minute of it. So anyway, by the time high school came, I was ready to be the next Mickey Mantle. We were at a 6A school, just like this one. I didn't know there were going to be 120 kids out for baseball. I went out, thought I had a great day, and the next day they said, okay, everybody, tomorrow morning, go down to the gym and check and see which field you're going to be on. And so I went down, and on the first list, my name wasn't on that one. And on the second list, my name wasn't on that one either. And on the third list, my name wasn't there either. I had been cut the first day out. 10th grade, cut. The next Mickey Mantle, there's been a serious mistake. And you know how if sometimes you're in an argument with somebody and you've just had your guts cut out and your heart broken, but you're not going to blink because you know you'll start crying. Well, I was standing there with about 175 baseball players. I don't know, it seemed like a million. And my name wasn't on the list. I'd been cut, so I back out of the hallway there. I go outside. I blinked, and I started crying. And I ran all the way home. Apparently not as fast as I thought I wasn't as fast as I thought I might have been during the tryouts, but I had a great day. I went home that night, had a few donuts to ease the pain. You know, it's what you got to do, right? It's what we do. And my dad comes in and he goes, you know, Willie, you know you're in trouble when your dad calls you a name that's not even your name. I mean, come on. You know, Willie, you're a pretty good baseball player. I've paid for 37 windows. Let's bring that up again, right? I paid for 37 windows. You've got great legs because you can ride that bike around, but it probably wouldn't hurt you to back off those donuts. Okay? This is where Dad's advice comes in handy, right? Tell it like it is. So, okay, Dad, thank you for all of your compassion and your empathy today. I'm going to back off the donuts. So I go down to the next day, I get message that the high school coach wants to see me. And this is where I put all of it in an envelope. We all have a coach, right? We've all had a coach. We've all had a teacher. We've all had a mom. We've all had a dad. We've all had somebody that believed in us and in our dream. And I believe every kid has a dream as much as I'm standing here. I know it. I've experienced a lot of it. So anyway, I go in and I sit down. Coach Hensley wants to see me. And a year before he died, and I spoke at his funeral, he wanted to go to dinner. He says, hey, come on down and let's go to dinner. So we did. He said, do you remember what I said to you the day after I cut you? The day after I cut you, you remember what I said to you? I said, no. Was I still crying? And he said, well, looked like you might have had a bit of a rough day. Here's what I was telling you. We were watching you play. Your hard work got you noticed. There were so many kids out for baseball, we didn't know you, and you didn't play football. But I looked at the other coaches and I said, who is that kid out in center field that thinks he's Mickey Mantle and that is outworking everybody? And none of us knew you. He goes, what I'm asking you to do, he said, what I told you was two things. First of all, I'm glad that your mother and father didn't come to fight your battle this morning for you. And I said, well, they couldn't have. They have jobs. They had to work, you know. And he said, but the second thing was you manned up, you came down, and I'm just telling you that if you'd get in a little bit better shape, I think next year you can make the team. So, you know, as a second or third or fourth grade coach, and I'm going to get into this with my dear friend Ned Yost, who helped me write my book, it all starts in Little League. It starts in second, third, and fourth grade basketball, and Little League, and football. And I am pleased to report to you that I've been doing this now for about 18 years. I could read you emails this year that would say what a wonderful job the dads are doing in this day and age, the moms are doing in this day and age. Yeah, I've sat in some stands and I'm going, oh, I don't think I'd have said that in front of everybody. You know, I think I would back off that just a little bit. But the ones that I even got this weekend were so great about how the dads and moms were encouraging and yelling the good stuff. That's what I've kind of been doing for the last 17 years with my book. So anyway, the next morning I went down to pick up my papers, and I told the dispatcher, I said, guess what, Charlie, you just got a raise. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I can't eat donuts anymore. I got to quit eating donuts. My coach says they're holding me back. You weren't even my coach yet. But I'm living in this world, right? Kids live in a world. So I told him, I said, you just got a raise. I've got to give up what's holding me back. That's a great lesson for me. So I'll go get the donuts and we'll work on giving them all up. So I went from like 12 a day to 10 to, you know, you can't give it all up at once, right? I mean, it takes a little while. So, and I knew I had a year to get ready anyway. So my dad found me a place to play. And dads, moms, I'm telling you, always find a place for your kids to play. I don't care what you got to do. Make up a league if you have to. Find a place for your kids to play if that's what they want to do. Whatever they want to do, you support what they want to do. And I'm telling you what, a fun thing happened to us this year. About 7 years ago, our oldest son comes up to me and he says, "Father." I said, "Yes, son." He said, "Let me tell you what you're going to do." I said, "What am I going to do?" He says, "You're going to sell your house, move into our carriage house out back, rent-free, live there, help us drive the kids around some." So I know what you all are up against because I've been driving kids around. He says, "And maybe that's how we'll pay you back, and you can help us out a lot." So I would almost tell you, make sure that you coach your children so where one day they want you to live with them free. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, Suzanne and I were talking, we don't have a house payment. He's making us pay the electric bill. Can you believe that? $213. That's easy. And so we sold our house. That was hard, but we wanted to sell our house while we could. But when your kids ask you to come back and live with them, that's really a pretty cool thing. So I quit eating donuts. The next year I made the team. This was Tulsa Hale High School, if any Okies out there or anything. And I received a full scholarship to play at the University of Oklahoma. Psalms 37:4-5 says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your ways to him, and he will make your path straight." Well, that's been my life verse since I was 17 years old. And as you can tell, the path wasn't always straight, but guess what? Nobody's path is straight. You know what I mean? There's things that you got to do. You got to keep going. And and God has a plan for your life, for your kid's life, or whatever. Don't you think you ought to give him a little time to work it out? But it'll happen. And they'll figure out what they want to do. And when they do, it's the coolest thing. It's the coolest thing ever. So I go down to the University of Oklahoma. I graduate. We played 4 College World Series. Everything I ever wanted to do and dream of, I got to do. And signed with the Milwaukee Brewers and played with them for 6 years. And then I tore the ligaments in my left ankle. And it still hurts today. But anyway, that ended my career. And so for 23 years, I got to coach my children. So that's kind of where we are tonight. We're talking about coaching our children. The greatest thing I ever did in my life was coach my children. The thing that I got the most joy out of was coaching my children and everybody else's children in the community. Okay? Because you see what happens in the community that you're in right now. When they find out that you're the coach and you're going to be leading the team, the parents go, "Oh, we're so glad we got him or her. We're so glad." And I was glad I didn't have to coach basketball because I know nothing about basketball. But I was lucky that there were guys that did love basketball. And we all did that, and we all played. So, in my 22nd year of coaching, something really weird happened. I was selling season tickets for the Royals. I was a Royal Lancer. I was 52 years old, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was literally praying one night, Lord, what am I going to do? I can't stand to go any more Royals games. They were terrible. I mean, we weren't very good. And although I loved them and I loved the game, I really, seriously. So all of a sudden, one night, I'm coaching third base, and I'm out at 3-2. And I told the guys I wouldn't mention 3-2, but Blue Valley, 3-2, whatever. That's where I was. Or if I would have been out here, I'd have mentioned it. And all of a sudden, this third baseman who I love to death, I'd known him since he was 6 years old, just right where you guys are today. Got a beard like my friend here in the orange shirt. He was 6 years old and had facial hair. He said, "Coach, I love this game." I said, "I love this game too, Nick, and I love you. You remind me of me. I love the way you play the game." He goes, "Okay, Coach, let's get it on." Now, this is the other team's third baseman. Not even mine, but I loved him. And I had watched him play for years. He was 12. I'd watched him play since he was like 6. I thought, this kid. And he was kind of one of those kids, kind of a pain, but man, you wanted him on your team. You sure did. First ball hit to him, he misses it. And the coach over in the third base dugout just screamed so violently, it rocked me. It shook me. And I looked over at him and I said, hey, stop it. This is a wonderful kid. He just made an error. That's part of the game. That's why there's an E on the scoreboard. He loves the game more than he loves anything. That's okay. So, kind of shook me up. Next ball hit to him. He picks it up, blocks it with his chest, and he throws it 50 feet over the first baseman's head. Why? He's scared. He just can't stand it. Well, the coach yanks him out of the game, and my friend is sitting over here, and he's got his hands in his, I'll never forget this sound that and I was dying. I was dying watching this kid in this kind of pain. And I really, if anything, I felt bad for this coach that he had done this. Because that's the kind of thing that we'll get to every message you send is received. But when you send a message, a kid will receive every message you send. I know that for a fact. Drew, married to Julie, my son. He goes, Pops. He goes, you're pretty good at it. You're a pretty good coach. I said, what do you mean pretty good at it? He goes, well, you had your moments. Most of the time you're pretty good. He goes, but I'll tell you the one thing you did that I wished you would have never done. About 4 or 5 times in our life, on the way home, you didn't say a word. You didn't say one word to me. He said, I wish you'd have gotten out of the car and thrown me out of the car and we'd have got after it out in the middle of the street. It was worse than the silence. And I'm going, oh, buddy. Why did I do that? Well, first of all, because I was probably ticked. Maybe I'd had a bad day. I knew this guy over here, this dugout over here had a bad day, but you know what? We all have bad days. Anybody here not had one? If you haven't had a bad day and that's happened to you, come speak. You know what I mean? Some people say, I wish I'd have had your book when I was coaching. I said, I wish I'd have had my book when I was coaching. You can't write a book till you've done it. You know what I mean? You just can't do it. I mean, you can, maybe, whatever, but I couldn't. I had no dreams that I was going to write a book. But all of a sudden that night I hear in my heart, okay, write your book. Write your book. And I look over and I thought, where is this kid's dad? Well, it was his dad. Okay? And I thought, if that's not his dad, where is his mother? My mother, you wouldn't have got halfway through that if my mother would have been there. Because the mothers are the keepers of the sandlot. The dads, they can tell me that or whatever they want to do, but the mothers are the keepers of the sandlot. I can tell you that. Matter of fact, I was a freshman at the University of Oklahoma. My mother, like I said, always saw the good in me. My mother laid it out for me. She knew what I needed. She knew me. When Coach Hensley wanted to see me the next day, I said, Mom, that was the most important day of my life, was that Coach Hensley didn't give up on me. And she said, yes, it was. Yes, it was, honey. If he wouldn't have seen you that next morning, you would have gone away. And my wife goes, where do you think you would have gone? And I said, away. I don't know where I would have gone. I would probably still have a paper route. I don't know what I would have done. Well, insurance, I couldn't have afforded it. But I go down to the University of Oklahoma, I get a scholarship. This is my favorite story about my mother. I'm a leadoff hitter, I'm pretty good. We go to 4 College World Series. First year a freshman could ever start in D1. So I go down and I start, we play Texas, Texas Tech, and Baylor. All right? I strike out 6 times in one day. My mother comes up to me after the game and says, you made a nice catch. I go, thanks, Mom. I love you more than any human being on the planet, but we'll talk about it later. My dad, he loved me too, I knew that, but he comes up and he goes, 18 pitches? You couldn't hit one of them? He goes, it's kind of tough to be your daddy today. And I said, do you think it was tough being me? You know what I mean? And so anyway, but my mother, you made a nice catch. Oh my gosh. College World Series, I dive into the fence, knock myself out, I'm gone. My dad he beat everybody to me. So he was there too, but 18 pitches is a lot for a dad to absorb. And you're going to have your moments where you're going to go, I don't know what's going on with my kid. You're going to have those moments. Don't be silent on the way home. Don't do that to them. I'm just if I can help you out. So anyway, I look over at this guy. I'm walking out of the ballpark, and all of a sudden, I hear some cleats coming up behind me. And it's my third baseman. It's my buddy. And I look over at him and I said, buddy, I said, you can play for me. You can come play for me. I said, but by the way, where's your mom and dad? He goes, well, my mom's right behind you. And I went, okay. Now, I got a mother who has let her son walk up to the opposing coach because he wants to play for him now. And I went, okay. And so then I go, where's your dad? He goes, I don't think you can see him, but he's way behind her. Okay. So there he is. He's back there now. So I'm going to write a book. I called Jeff Chalk, who runs 3 and 2. I said, Jeff, how many kids have played at 3 and 2? He said, well, since 1953, we've had 65,000. I said, really, how many have played in the big leagues? He said, oh, that's easy, none. 65,000, none. Now, since then, we've had a couple get up, we know that, out of probably 150,000. But the odds are amazing. And if the big league scouts know that your kid can play in the big leagues or the NBA or soccer or whatever, they'll find your diamond. What's the key to it? They have to still be playing. They have to love the game, okay? So anyway, I write my book, and I wrote this book. Now this is David. This is my first grandson. He's in Matthew's glove, my oldest, and my son is holding him up in his glove. This is his hand right here, because that's what we're supposed to do, right? Hold up our children, right? No matter what they want to do, hold them up. You know what I mean? You're all they got. You know what I mean? It's really cool. But the first thing I said to Matthew was, nice catch. Nice catch. And does it look like he's just dreaming of playing baseball? He's not. He doesn't even like baseball. No, he does love the Royals, don't get me wrong. But anyway, he's not here so I can tell this story, but about 6 weeks ago, we get his ACT score. He made a 34. I said, buddy, both times I took the ACT, didn't add up to 34. You know, and so he's sending off applications to North Carolina, and Notre Dame came in the mail last week, and we're not even Catholic. And he's going, I said, hey, buddy, go for it. Matthew goes, I don't know about that one. That's pretty expensive. So anyway, you know, we are going on November 11th to the University of Oklahoma to look at the law program. So I told my grandson, David, I said, don't jack with me, buddy. This is serious stuff now here. Don't mess with Granddaddy that you might think about going to Oklahoma. So I write this book called The Keepers of the Sandlot. And all it was for you all, to help you get through the game. So now my buddy back in the dugout over here, he calls me the next couple weeks later, and he goes, hey, Coach, I was wondering, do you think Nick could play for you? It's a year later. Do you think Nick could play for you in a state tournament? I said, I'd love to have him, and I'd love to have you too. And I said, because if you'll recall, that night that you and I had that little moment where we kind of asked each other to cool off a little bit, God put it on my heart to write a book. Oh, Coach, that's great. I said, let's go to lunch and talk about it. He looks at me and he goes, Coach, what's your book about? I said, crazy guys like you. They yell and scream at Little League kids just because they made an error. You know, you kind of had a bad day, right? He goes, oh, Coach, that's a bad day. I didn't even get to ride home with my wife and my kids. Nobody would let me in the car. It's a good thing I drove myself. I said, I know, but it's a good day for me because I got to write a book for the rest of my life. I get to know what I get to do, and that's to help guys like you get through this really, really tough deal of raising children and parenting and playing baseball. And you know what he said to me? This is the coolest line I think I've ever heard. He says, Coach, if it'll help other parents relax and not act like I did that night with my son, who I love more than my life, he says, you can make up junk about me and put it in your book just to help other people relax. So I get the book, I've got it done, and I don't have anybody to write the foreword. So Ned Yost and I were teammates with the Brewers for a long time. Our wives are very, very close. And he had just been fired by the Milwaukee Brewers. So I thought, perfect, he can write the foreword to my book. Because I called him. Deborah, his wife, answers the phone. She goes, hey, Billy. You know, Mississippi. Hey, Billy. I said, hey, Deborah. I said, hey, what's Ned doing? She goes, well, did you know he got fired? I said, yeah, we have ESPN. Yeah, I saw it. Yeah. He goes, well, he's in the basement and he's pouting. And he doesn't think he's ever going to do anything in baseball again. Do you believe that, Billy? I said, no, Deborah, I don't believe that. So I said, but get him, I need him to help me with my book. So she runs across the kitchen and, Ned. You know, I always thought it was like one syllable, but for Deborah, it's 2 syllables. Ned. Billy's on the phone, he needs some help with his book, so talk to him. So he picks up the phone, and he says, hey, what's up, man? I said, oh, you know that book we've been talking about all these years? Well, I finally had an occasion to write it, and I was wondering, since you don't have anything to do today, I was thinking maybe you'd like to write the foreword to my book. So he said, oh, I'd love to. So he writes the book, and the rest is history. He comes back here. When he finally gets made manager of the Kansas City Royals, a bunch of my friends were going, is that the guy you told us that you knew? And I said, yeah, he's been down there with Bobby Cox, learning a few things in Atlanta, and then he went to manage the Milwaukee Brewers, and they made a mistake and let us have him. And I don't know if any of you all heard his Hall of Fame speech, but I have it in writing, and it is amazing. He thanked all the people. He thanked everybody, from every player to the people that work in the front office to the field office. He gets very emotional about David Glass, but he had only one goal when he got here to Kansas City, and that was to win a World Series championship for us. But he also knew that it was going to take a whole bunch of people to do it. I'm going to tell you that from 2nd to 3rd to 4th to 5th grade, you all are going to need each other. You're going to have to do it. So anyway, there's a few things that I'd like to just leave you with. I hope I'm not too late. I hope I have time and I'm not too late here. But I already mentioned the first thing is the Sandlot, which is where you are right now, is a time where your kids need to have fun, they need to be with their friends, and they need to figure out the game. So when you go to the games this year, let them have fun, let them figure it out. It's a very, very difficult game. All the positive stuff, don't help the referees as much. It's tough. When I was writing this book, I decided to go out and umpire at 3 and 2 for a summer. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe how difficult it was. There's a chapter in this book called The Blues Eye View. I had a couple fans one day yell at me and tell me I wouldn't know the strike zone if it bit me if it bit me. And I started to say, I have a baseball card that says I batted 6,000 times and didn't strike out all that much. But I can tell you right now that when a 3-foot, 2-inch tall batter is standing right there and I'm about to fall over and faint in 106 degrees, and a 4-foot tall pitcher throws a 37-mile-an-hour fastball into the PIM in a 37-mile-an-hour crosswind, that ball's a strike about 9 times. And I would sit there and go, ball, strike, ball. Well, half the group would go nuts and half the group thought I was the greatest. Until the next pitch. It wasn't easy to do, but I put the gear on and it was very, very difficult. So what I'm saying here is let the kids play the game and learn. The second thing, The second thing is on page 12 is that I think is probably one of the most important things that I always had with me is I'm very patient. One of my Little League mothers said one day, she goes, what is it about you? She said, all these other parents are screaming and yelling and screaming and everything, and we look over at you and, well, you look like you're asleep. And I would say, they're only 6. They're 7 years old. It's not going to look like the big leagues just yet. On page 15, one of my good friends is a guy named Joe Carter. Joe lives out here, or did, in Hallbrook or somewhere. And Joe used to watch me play when I was at Oklahoma. And Joe said, every kid needs a hero. And I believe that more than anything. Mom, dad, coach, whatever, every kid needs a hero. Every kid needs a mom, a dad, whatever. It's all in this book here. I just thought it was kind of fun to kind of walk through it because I hadn't read it in a while. And I thought, why don't you read your book? And after about 4 pages, I said, you wrote it. You know most of this stuff. So I was just trying to remind myself of what I wrote. On page 19, it says, the joy of leading. I want each one of you to understand that this is the greatest joy you'll ever get, to coach your children. With sportsmanship being the issue that it is in this day and age, just don't pay attention to anybody other than your team. Don't worry about anybody else. Just worry about your own team. And you'll enjoy it, because this is your team. One day, I had a couple coaches that wanted to get rid of a couple kids on my team, because they weren't as good as everybody else, right? And the 2 coaches walked up to me and said, there's a couple, we need to get rid of a couple on this team. I said, really? Am I looking at them? And they went, we'll just go coach our bases like we're supposed to. And I said, good. These are their friends. I can't tell you how many times, and if you want to have a discussion with your kids, you just ask one of them if you want to just get rid of one of their friends and see what happens. They will set you straight. They will set you straight on who their friends are. And I would say something like, I don't think Jack wants to play for us. And my son, Drew, would say, Dad, Jack loves you. You know. Well, I didn't know Jack loved me, but apparently everybody else did. You know what I mean? But Jack was just figuring out the game. And Drew, the keepers of the sandlot ultimately wind up being the children, because they keep their friends where they are on your team. It can be the greatest experience of your life. Ned, on page 20, Ned said one day while we were talking in Arizona, it all starts in Little League. I believe it all starts at second, third, and fourth grade. Everything that you want your kid to learn about life, you're going to teach them in these next 2 or 3 or 4 years. They're going to remember it, they're going to watch it, and more importantly, they're going to watch you. Because you are their hero. Make no mistake about it. I could be whoever I am and whatever, great coach, whatever, written a book and everything else, but I'm never anybody else's mom and dad. I'm not. I'm responsible for my kids. Matter of fact, one guy told me one day, he says, what's your title? And I said, I don't have one. He says, well, everybody used to know your name. And I said, well, my name changed. He said, what do you mean your name changed? I said, I became Matthew's dad. Then I became Sarah's dad. Then I became Drew's dad. Then I became Will's dad. Nobody hardly knows my name now. They'll go, are you Will's dad? Are you Drew's dad? Yeah, see, your name changes and you become somebody else. But I think everything that your kid's going to need to be successful in life is started right now. And Ned says this too. He says, you only get a few years to burn into your kid's brain what they need to know. And then they go off. And they really do. They go off. I'm telling you, they leave. And then guess what? Thank the Lord for us, they came back. We have 13 grandchildren who live within 5 miles of us. So that's really pretty cool. I mean, we're pretty thankful. My boss told me that my wife could travel with me some and go out traveling when I make sales calls now. And I told her, honey, you want to go traveling with me? She goes, why? Why? She goes, the grandkids are here. You know, it's really pretty cool. So Ned says, the 2 things that you need to do on page 21, and I'm serious, if you didn't get a book, call me. I've got a 501c3. I'll get them to you. But this has a money-back guarantee on this book if you want it, and it can help you out. Ned said there's 2 things that you do. You need to teach your children to play fearlessly and then help them to develop their own natural abilities. Okay? My wife used to ask me to make it simpler. How do you know where all the positions everybody plays? And I said, well, you just have to put them where it naturally fits them. You can kind of tell. It's funny, one day that's mentioned in the book, I had an epiphany moment. I had this guy that wanted a piece of me. He wanted to beat my team. And so we went to where they were. And this guy had 4 coaches. They're all chewing Red Man. They were going to get a piece of us. You know, we were Prairie Village. We were the cake eaters. Everybody wants to beat the cake eaters, right? They wanted to beat us up pretty good. So we're in another land. And I looked at my buddy Brad, and I said, hey, you want to go get some coffee? He said, yes. He designed the Sprint Center. He's designed an Oakland Stadium. He'd been out for all week. I said, let's go get some coffee. So I go over to these chewing good, crazy guys. And I said, hey guys, we're going for coffee. Can we bring you anything? And he goes, you're leaving? I said, our kids know how to play this game. I looked over at the boys and I said, boys, can you all play without us today? And they said, get out of here. Go. And when we came back, they were beating those guys like a drum. I had a couple mothers sitting under the tree, so I knew nothing wrong was going to happen. And we went, and our kids played great. So anyway, on page 83 is probably, I think, is maybe the most important thing I will say to you is when I was 17 years old, the minister in our church gave this lesson, and he talked about responding in love instead of reacting in anger. If you could get a 17-year-old boy to remember that the rest of his life, it must be kind of important. But what I would wish for each one of you, because things are going to get tough out there someday. It's going to get crazy at the ballpark or in the gym, and somebody's going to get crazy. All you need to do and remind in your head here is to respond in love instead of reacting in anger. We see it everywhere. I don't think I have to explain it too much more. We see it on the highways, we see it on the roads, we see it everywhere we're going. Your children need to learn how to respond the same way. If you got to turn around and walk off, if you got to turn around and take your whole team and leave, do it. There are plenty of places to go eat. We've done it. So, page 83, respond instead of react. It has helped me in every day of my life up till today. I mean, every day. Okay? And the final and last thing that I'll leave you with is, well, there's a couple thoughts here on the back that I wanted to say. Kevin Seiter's a good friend. Don't ever be the coach that makes a kid give up the game. Don't ever be that guy. I have, almost everywhere I speak, somebody will come up to me afterward and goes, let me tell you about my coach. Let me tell you about my coach. And I know where they're going. I know whether it's good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. And then one of my closest friend when I was playing early on in the low minor leagues, his name's Gary the Rock. And Gary's the assistant to the general manager of the St. Louis Cardinals. And he said, tell your parents we don't have time to scout Little League. I think that's the greatest line. We don't have time to scout Little League. There's too much water, it's got to go under the bridge, right? So anyway, so my last thought is the last chapter. There's a comment in there from my board chairman who said, every message you send is received. Just remember this, from silence to the worst thing to the best thing, every message you send, that kid is bringing in. They're going to keep it, and they're going to keep it for the rest of their life. And the last chapter is called The Ride Home. And I think this is sometimes where it falls apart for a lot of people on the ride home. The analysis, the overanalyzing, the why did you do this? Why did you do this? Don't do that. Just tell your kid how much you love them, because what's going to happen is one of these days, you're going to drive home, you're going to drop them off at a college somewhere, they're going to do something, and you're going to ride home alone. And I'm telling you, that is the toughest day of your life. Except for the day the next year when we left Matthew and Sarah together at school and we drove home. And Drew, our third one's going, hey, what about me? Why is this happening? You know, the third one just takes a real beating in the deal, right? I mean, he's going, hey, yo, here I am. You know, and then the fourth one came along and we were complete again because they had each other, you know what I mean? I mean, obviously you have everybody. But the ride home from wherever you're going home from needs to be the greatest thing. There's a gal named Natasha Watley who helped us. We made a documentary. And she said, I would play 7 games. She was an All-American Olympian. She said, I would play 7 games of softball, and my dad, all he wanted to do was talk about a bunt I didn't lay down or something. She goes, I would lay in the back seat, and I would try and play like I was asleep. So, but I learned how, and I think the greatest advice I could ever leave you with is to learn how to respond instead of react. Just do that. You'll have the greatest time with your kids. Second of all, enjoy every ride home. Wrap them up. Tell them how much you love them. And tell them you got their back. For the rest of their lives, you'll be there for them. And that's what the Keepers of the Sandlot do. Keep it alive. And then when they come in and tell you they want to play the bass fiddle, they're not cheap, but you're going to need to go looking at them. Go find a bass fiddle and get it done, because God's got a big plan for all of them. So it's probably 7 o'clock. I have a 4-year-old who is saving me a piece of Mario Brothers birthday cake. So I'm good. If there's 1 or 2 questions, I can take them, but I know we're late. But congratulations on y'all being here tonight. Thank you.